Hello, everyone. My name is Ralitsa Miteva. I'm a product strategist at OneSpan. Here together with me is Dan McLoughlin, our field CTO. Hello, Dan. Thank you so much for joining us today. I have a couple of questions for you.
Sure.
OneSpan published the first global mobile app security vulnerabilities report based on study provided by Promon Research.
Yes.
Enterprises face so many security threats. Why prioritize mobile app security? Why now?
Yeah, sure. So it's really important. It's always been important, mobile app security, but it's particularly important at the moment. The mobile app is the majority of customers' first touch point and shop window into an organization. So it's really important that you get your mobile app right. And a lot of people spend a lot of time and money on making sure the user experience is good. But unfortunately, sometimes that means things like security gets left by the wayside. So trust is also just as important. And the reputational damage that can come from an app that's leaking data or potentially funds is huge. So it's really important. And I think the reason that we're seeing that now, why you need to prioritize that is for those reasons. You've got to keep the trust and you've got to keep your reputation. It's really important in mobile applications.
Yeah, thank you. The research indicates that roughly 6 out of 10 financial applications are vulnerable to repackaging attacks. I'm not saying that this is so surprising. However, still, how did we get here?
Yes, how do we get to this situation? Well, I think it's a factor of the way that mobile app security took off. Mobile applications took off. If you look at things like the financial sector, it took years for online banking to become hugely popular. And then months for mobile banking to reach those same levels. So there was a huge drive in the mobile space. And obviously that means everyone's always catching up. Also, some of the traditional methodologies for mobile app security have all been about, data at rest, data protection at rest. So we're looking at things like encryption and code obfuscation. And they're really important. They really are. But that leaves out another really important element, which is the runtime. When the app is running itself, it's also vulnerable. And that's not necessarily been the main focus. So we have to focus on usability. As we've said already, the mobile app is the shop window. It's the main touch point that many people have into the way that they work with an organization. So it's really important that the usability is high. And mobile app developers are not necessarily always security experts. So they don't necessarily add all of the security features that are needed into your mobile application. So that's one of the reasons. And also some of the shielding techniques that are out there to protect applications have been difficult to use in the past. So that's another reason why maybe people have been put off. They don't really want to change the user experience. That's so important. So maybe some misconceptions around how to secure an app properly without changing the usability is also part of the problem.
Indeed, yes. What's your advice? What can app developers do to secure their mobile apps?
Absolutely. So firstly, follow the best practice standards. There's lots of things out there. You can use different societies like NIST to look at the best practices for security in general. You can use tools from Apple and Google as well. They do provide security tools as well. So that's really important to use. But realistically, speak to professionals. Speak to security professionals. That's their job. That's their job, is to secure things and make sure that your applications are secure. And I know sometimes it always seems scary because people are worried about the user experience being diminished when you start adding security, but that's not always the case. We can add security without necessarily ruining the user experience, and sometimes enhancing the user experience in some ways as well. So it's really important to speak to professionals who are used to doing the job and understanding how that works. So it's that marriage of both user experience and security together that's really important in this.
Indeed. Thank you. This is really very important for the business today, that user experience is kept in that the application does not change the user experience after adding security.
Yeah.
Beyond these tactical adjustments, how should enterprise be changing their strategy for the mobile channel?
Yeah. Again, remember the mobile is your front door now. That's the front door that people have into your organization. It's the shop window that you present to the world. So your strategy really has to be around that mobile experience and also your reputation, as we mentioned before. You've got to remember your customers are using this. They're going to use the app often. They don't necessarily want to feel that things are invasive, but they also want to feel that there's a level of security, and they're going to expect it as well. And that's the other thing. Users will expect to be protected. They're not expecting to lose data or funds or anything through your mobile application. They see it as your environment in their mobile device. So if I'm using a banking application, I'm expecting that application to be protecting myself and all of my funds inside that I access through that application. And same with other applications, just where I've got data stored, etc. We have that sort of inherent trust in the providers to provide that security. So always think around that when you're developing your applications moving forwards. Your customers are expecting it from you, and if you lose that trust, you'll lose your customers.
Indeed. We are heading into 2023. Can you give us a sense of the mobile threat landscape? What to expect?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely expect more data losses. We're seeing it constantly in the news. You see data losses through all sorts of different mechanisms, and mobile will be no exception to this. Just as it's the best gateway for us to use to get access to our data, it's also a great gateway for malicious actors to try and utilize to get access to data. So we have to be really careful about that. The targets won't just be in the financial sector. Data is just as important. And we've seen this time and again in the past as well, and it will continue to be so in coming up into the next year or so. Access to your data, almost gives you access to an identity to a degree. So we have to be really careful about that. If you can get access through the mobile application, you can gain access to data. You can then use that to access other things, and that's how a lot of this is done. So we will definitely see that, and you'll see more and more runtime attacks in the mobile apps themselves. So it's not just going to be the app sitting on a phone and the phone under attack. It's going to be the application while it's running that you're going to see more and more attacks on, because there is a vulnerability there when it's in a running state, and that's the thing that we really need to protect just as much as when it's at rest.
And my last question, what trends do you see that can help us understand what lies ahead 5 or 10 years from now?
Yeah. If we start looking into the crystal ball and going into the future, we've got to start thinking about, where does the Web 3.0 messaging sort of come into play? We're starting to see elements of that. We've got blockchain. We've got the crypto world is sort of in a strange situation at the moment, with sort of very high profile crashes of exchanges, etc. But the underlying technology is still a fundamental part of what's going to make the internet moving forwards. And there's no issue with the actual underlying technology. So we are going to see more things like wallets, and things like what we call self-sovereign ID, where you take ownership of your own identity and use the blockchain, therefore, to verify that moving forwards. We see that coming, but we've seen that coming for a long time. So it's difficult to say it's going to be 5 years, it's going to be 10 years. The real blocker is usability again. You can go all out in Web 3.0 right now, but you have to be really engaged in that technology and understand that in depth how to use the technology. There's no simple user interface for Web3 technologies right now, and that's where we are with the sort of Web 2.5 as people call it now, where you've got wonderful user experience wrapping around the technology that we already have, and people aren't willing to give up on that experience. So we will see these things in the future. It's just really difficult to say when. It's going to be about the user experience. But some of the other things that we're going to start seeing is things around a trusted identity. Users' identity is going to be a big thing moving forwards. Accountability as well. You might see this in social spaces as much as you will in in important financial transactions. We see so much fraud at the moment through impersonation and social engineering that it's going to be really important that impersonation is very difficult to do online, and that people can then prove identity in multiple situations. So yes, when you're signing up for a financial app right now, you'll have to go through some sort of identity proving. But in the future, maybe to use social apps, dating apps, etc., you may not be able to do as much unless you provide your full identity to that application for safeguarding of individuals, etc., and just to remove some of the anonymity online. That's a difficult space. A lot of people have really want to hold that privacy element, and I think that's something that is going to happen over the years. We'll see this balancing act where it's necessary, you'll have to prove identity. So you may be able to browse anonymously certain things in a social experience, for example. But if you want to engage, or if you want to go to another level, then an identity might have to be provided. So we'll see different types of identity proofing and identity trust mechanisms moving through over the next 5 years, and possibly even identity aggregation, because we're already seeing now that you can get identity in certain countries, certainly in Europe. In Belgium, for example, you'll get electronic identity provided by the government in Belgium. Yeah. And trusted by the government in Belgium, but not trusted necessarily outside of Belgium, and individual countries. And therefore, maybe we're seeing an EU-wide wallet coming up. But again, how do we get that trust outside of those? So you may start to see aggregation of identities as well, where there will be organizations that will help to use your trusted identity in one area to re-enable that trust in something else. So that's another area that we might see moving forwards, is this sort of aggregation of your different identities and your self-sovereign identity as well, because there has to be an element of trust in that too.
Thank you, Dan. This was so insightful. Thank you so much for this conversation.
No problem.